We're going to show you how to install the double A-arm kit to a club car Precedent. The first step you want to do, using a 13 millimeter socket and wrench, remove the bolts that are holding the stop bumper or stock light assembly from the car, which will allow you to remove the stock bumper. And unhook your wires from your wiring harness. Using a 21 millimeter socket, you need to remove the nut that's holding the hub to the car. You will not be reusing this nut. We supply you with new slotted nuts with cotter pins. Now, using a 17 and 18 millimeter wrench and socket, remove the nut that's holding the tie rod end to the spindle. Save this hardware for reinstallation. You want to do this to both driver and passenger side. Now, with a 13 millimeter socket, remove the upper A-arm bolt and the lower shock bolt from both the driver and passenger side of the car. Now we're going to remove the 4 bolts that are holding the subframe to the car from underneath using a 13 millimeter socket. Now you want to save these bolts. With the leaf spring assembly and spindles off the car, we need to remove the 3 stock bolts that are holding the steering box to the car. This will allow us to get to the inner upper A-arms using a 13 millimeter socket. Now you simply just slide the steering box up, and then using a 13 millimeter socket, remove the stock bolt that's holding the inner A-arm to the car. You save this bolt for installation of the new upper A-arm. Now we want to install the upper A-arms to the stock upper A-arm location using the stock bolt. And as you can see, the gusset goes towards the rear of the car, and you want to securely install this. This one here is the passenger side, and you can see the gusset will go to the rear. The upper A-arm securely installed, reinstall the steering box to the car using the stock bolts and securely install. Using the supplied 5/16 by 2, securely install both the driver and passenger side shocks to the upper A-arms. Putting the jam nut on the heim end, and then installing the heim end to the A-arm as shown. Now this is going to be for your camber adjustment, so you just want to run this in about 3/4 of the way and snug the jam nut, because we're going to have to adjust this after we put our wheels and tires on. Now we're ready to install the subframe to the car. This is the front of the subframe. As you can see, the center hole is just a little bit offset towards the front, and you're going to use your stock subframe bolts for the back and the supplied M10s for the front mount, and you install it to the frame as shown and securely tighten all the bolts. You have the subframe securely installed to the car using a 3/8 drill bit. Go up through the hole in the subframe and drill through the frame of the car. We're ready to install the leaf spring to the car. We're going to use this applied 3/8 by 1 3/4 bolt. Going to come up through and installing it to the hole we just drilled through the subframe and through the car, and securely install it. And notice how the arch goes up with the end of the leaf springs coming down. Now we're ready to install the bottom A-arms to the car using the supplied 3/8 by 3 bolts and lock nuts. You just snug these. You don't want to securely install yet, but you want to make sure that the bushing plate goes to the top as shown. We're looking at the passenger side. Now you're ready to install the leaf spring to the bottom A-arm using the supplied 3/8 by 3.5 bolts, washers, and rubber bushings. As you can see, you got the bolt, you got the washer, and you have the rounded end of the rubber bushing going to the leaf spring on both top and middle. And then underneath, we have the same deal. You do not want to over tighten this, you just want to get it good and snug to both driver and passenger side. Now you're ready to install the heim end to the bottom A-arms. You want to run this the whole way in and then install the jam nut to the inside as shown on both the driver and passenger side. You don't have to tighten this yet until we set the camber. To install the spindles to the car, they are side specific. The steering arms goes towards the front of the car as shown. We're looking at the passenger side, and you want to bolt the spindle to the upper and lower heim ends using the supplied 1/2 by 1.5 Allen head bolts. Now you want to reinstall the tie rod ends to the steering arms on the new spindles. Securely install these using the stock hardware to both driver and passenger side. Now we want to reinstall the stock hubs using the supplied slotted nuts and new cotter pins, both driver and passenger side. Now we're going to install the rear lift. You want to jack the cart up and place the frame on jack stands and put a car jack under the rear swing arm or the rear differential. This will allow us to drop the rear once we remove the leaf springs. Remove the wheels and tires from both sides of the car. Remove the nuts that are holding the stock U-bolts to the car from both the driver and passenger side, then remove the U-bolts from the car. These will not be reused. Remove the nut that is holding the stock shock to the shock mount. Save the nut and bushings for reinstallation of the shock. Remove the brake cable holder from both sides of the car. This will allow the brake cable to drop and give us room to take the rear of the car apart. Save these for reinstallation. The next step is to jack the rear differential or rear swing arm up a little bit. This will take the weight off the leaf springs, which will make it easier for you to unattach the leaf springs. Unattach the leaf springs from both the front and rear leaf spring mounts. You want to save the bolts and bushings for reinstallation. Now that the leaf springs are loose, you want to take them off the car, and we're going to loosely reinstall them above the axle to the front mounts on both sides of the car. The next step, take your rear riser and sit on top of the axle, and it has a hole in it for your center pin of the leaf spring that will sit down inside that. Take your new shock mount, sit it on top of the leaf spring as shown, with the center pin of the leaf spring up through the shock mount. Slide your new U-bolt down through the shock mount. Now the U-bolt goes down through the stock brake cable plate, and then you want to securely tighten using the supplied nuts. Do this to both sides of the car. Using the stock bushings and nut, install the stock shock to the new shock mount. Now this kit comes equipped for a stem mount like shown, or if you have an eye mount shock, you want to mount it on the stem. Securely tightened to both sides of the car. Using the stock bolts and bushings, reinstall the rear leaf spring to the rear leaf spring mounts. Securely tighten to both sides of the car. Now you want to install your wheels and tires. And we're going to drop the cart to the ground once they're installed, and we're going to check the camber. We have somebody sitting in the middle of the car, and we're running a square, and we're out about a half inch. We're in about a half inch on the bottom. What we're going to do is we're going to shorten both the heims on the top driver and passenger side. When we have weight on the car, we're going to be approximately a 1/4 inch out at the top. And then you want to make sure that you retighten the jam nuts. Once you have the camber set, you want to make sure you retighten both the jam nuts to the top and bottom A-arms on both driver and passenger side. Then you want to remove all 4 of the spindle bolts and use the supplied Loctite/thread locker and put 1 drop on all 4 bolts and then securely tighten the spindles back to the car. You're on top and bottom of both driver and passenger side. Now that we have the camber set, we want to set the toe. As you can see, we're measuring across the front portion from inside driver to inside passenger. Then you want to take the same measurement and go to the rear portion of the front tire. And this particular car is towed out, so we need to tow it in. When we have it set right, we want the front measurement to be 1/8 to 1/4 inch narrower than the rear measurement. And the way we're going to get that is by both driver and passenger side loosening the jam nut on both the tie rod ends, and then you can take and turn your tie rod, which will push the tire out or pull the tire in on both sides. Once you have the proper alignment, make sure you retighten the jam nuts. And then now you want to go through the whole lift kit and double check that everything is securely tightened. All your bolts are in, all your cotter pins are in, and then you can reinstall the stock front bumper and you're done with the front.